Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, be sure to check out our show on our YouTube channel. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
You know, Joe, Reviews Without Remorse are way behind the times. The movies of the 80s aren't tough. They are sensitive character studies. I think we are 80s men. My name is David, and I'm getting too old for this shit. And with me is the man who doesn't make things complicated because they get that way all by themselves, Joe.
What's up, partner?
This is episode 152, and in this show we will discuss the weekly mourning appears to be unending. This week, Joe and I say goodbye to the wonderful Buck Henry. Birds of Prey gets what I assume is a final trailer, and if I may spoil my views a bit early, it's made my desire to see it even less so. The Mandalorian has finished its 8-episode run, and Joe and I will give our final thoughts on it. And then, we're taking you back to 1987 to review the classic, the always duplicated, never replicated, Mel Gibson, Danny Glover Christmas movie, Lethal Weapon. What's up, partner?
What's up, brother? How are you?
Good. Tired, as always. That seems to be my mantra. Our mantra lately seems to be, who the hell of our heroes died this week, and how frickin' tired are the both of us? We are old men.
Yeah. Oh, that is very, very true, my friend.
It's like when I was watching this movie, when we were watching Lethal Weapon, and it's like, you're 50, Daddy. And it's like, literally a shudder went down my spine. And I had to pause the movie for like 15 minutes just to get the hell over it. It's like, yes, I know I'm 50. Thank you, movie.
Yeah. I told Mary, I said, if we do a 50th birthday party for me, and I want to send out invitations with a picture of Murtaugh, and it just says, I'm too old for this shit. That is the theme of.
Well, enough bumbling around with our senility. Let's get to it.
Lord and Lady Douchebag. I am so frightfully glad you two could come. I was just asking Lady Salisbury, where the devil are those douchebags?
Well, it's been impossible to get him out of his workshop. He's been working day and night.
You douchebag? Well, I wasn't aware that you dabbled in that sort of thing. Tell me, what in heaven's name are you working on?
Well, I'd be happy to tell you, but perhaps after you've finished eating.
Well, here's Chambers right now. Chambers, get Lord and Lady Douchebag something to eat.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm not very hungry. A plate of raw vegetables would be fine. Would you like a dressing on that?
Just some vinegar and water, thank you.
Douchebag, how are you?
I haven't seen you in the House of Lords in ages. Don't tell me, for the first time in memory, we're going to have a parliament without a douchebag.
My dear Sandwich, Parliament has always had its share of douchebags and always will.
Spoken like a true douchebag. I have often heard the king say of your family, and yours as well, give me a sandwich and a douchebag, and there is nothing I cannot do. Hey, tell me, douchebag, when are you going to show us that invention of yours?
Yes, douchebag, just what kind of an invention are you sitting on?
Buck Henry was born December 9th, 1930 in New York City. You know what the funny thing about Buck Henry is like everybody's seen him before, but some people don't get just how amazingly influential he was. I mean, his first he worked on a lot of TV shows, and his first major screenplay and probably his biggest claim to fame cinematically was the screenplay for The Graduate, the Mike Nichols movie. But he didn't stay lazy. He also was the co-creator with Mel Brooks of one of my favorite TV shows growing up. That would be Get Smart.
All right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody forgets that one. He did a bunch of movies like The Owl and the Pussycat, What's Up, Doc, Day of the Dolphin. My God, I remember that one. A couple of Alfred Hitchcock Presents and stuff like that. He was a steady working writer for many years. Very, very in demand a little bit as an actor as well. He did some acting on like 30 Rock and Law and Order and things along those lines. Really, you've seen him before. You just probably haven't known his name. Okay. Buck Henry died January 8th, 2020 at the age of 89 in Los Angeles, California. I mean, he was mostly doing acting. I wish he had done more writing because he was really a funny comedic writer. And you don't see much like that anymore.
Yeah. The thing I think I remember him best for is his work on the classic Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yes.
And frankly, I feel like the first time I really became aware of him was probably... I guess it was 25 years, this Saturday Night Live special. It was probably the late 80s, I guess. And they kept sort of referring to him. They kept making wisecracks, it was the most vulgar thing you ever saw on TV. It took the record that was only broken by Buck Henry. And they kept going back to Buck Henry. And I'd be like, who is that? And then I found out exactly like who he was and what he contributed to that show. And yeah, I mean, I sort of feel like he was a lot of the classic, really good SNL before it turned to garbage.
Before it imploded in on itself, yeah. He seems like a very nice, sweet guy. So here's to you, Buck Henry. I hate feeling even older every day, but there it is.
Can I help you?
Why, yes, you can. I'm here to report a terrible crime.
And what terrible crime is that?
This one. Ah, shit. I told this all wrong. Quick history lesson. This all started when the Joker and I broke up. It was completely mutual. And soon enough, I was back on my feet, ready to embrace the fierce goddess within. It's so quiet.
Oh boy. So the first thing I want to get out of the way, and I'm going to borrow your bit of costume commanderness for a moment. I really like Black Mask's mask. I feel like that's actually an accurate representation of the mask from the comic, and it was nice to see. The rest of this movie is shit, and I have no interest. Go on.
So we're talking about Hot Topic, the movie. Birds of Prey.
You know what? You shouldn't insult Hot Topic like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I saw the second trailer and I thought to myself, well, I think the trailer is probably better than the last one, which they probably said about Suicide Squad, frankly. Yeah, I mean, but I said, well, it's a decent trailer for a movie that I have no interest in. I mean, again, I don't know who the market for this is. I don't know. I kind of feel like it's just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, I keep waiting for an all-female squad to come out that I can get excited for. I feel like, it's almost like as I'm talking about this movie, I kind of forgot that this was even sort of an all-female cast. But then when I started to complain about it, I was like, I realized, oh, wait a second, I'm falling into that trap, aren't I? This is like an all-female led superhero film. I'm supposed to be on board with this, and I'm not. But again, it's not because it's a female thing. It's because it just looks terrible. I don't get the jokes. I don't know what the point of the story is. And it's just one over-the-top cartoony gag after another. And I'm like, all right, but if you're going to do something that's silly and fun, well, make it look interesting or fun or something around that. It just looks dumb and, nonsensical. And Everybody has to be like larger than life and whatever. And I'm just not getting it. I'm not getting it. It's that weird. Again, it's that kind of Suicide Squad blend of silliness and colorful, but just grimy and dirty. And it's not grabbing me. I don't know. What about you?
And I agree with you on all of that. And I'm going to reiterate what I have said since the first time I saw this trailer. Okay. I have nothing against Margot Robbie. I don't feel she belongs in this movie. It kills me that the Huntress, the Black Canary, and Cassandra Cain are all basically being pushed to the side. Wonderful characters, excellent. You want to do a movie, you want to do a woke movie, you use those three, okay? That's all you needed to do a good Birds of Prey movie. You didn't need Harley Quinn. You didn't need her blowing up the Joker and being all woman power or whatever like that in the beginning. You didn't need that. So this is the thing that pisses me off every time I watch the trailer. Has nothing to do with the looks and the style and stuff like that, because a part of me could probably get behind that if you gave me anything compelling besides, look, here's Harley Quinn. Y'all like that? That's what it feels like every time I watch it. It feels like an old man is ripping me in the ribs. And, considering I just started the show with, hey, I'm 50, maybe I should be the one to talk. But it feels like an old Hollywood exec is ripping me in the ribs. Like, the kids like that Harley Quinn, right? Huh? We put a lot of her in here.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting to where I think Margot Robbie needs to really. I feel like once upon a time, the role of Harley Quinn was probably a really great idea, a really sought after role, and Margot Robbie would have been great for it, and she is. But now that you see it, it's like, you know what? She really just needs to move on and just do other things, because this is not a good use of her talent.
Agreed.
And honestly, it sort of suffers from the same fatigue. Like when you just mentioned the other superheroes, I kind of was like, oh yeah, they're in this, and then I'm like, yeah. But again, it's one of those things where I'm looking at it and I'm like, this doesn't feel anything like a superhero movie. Nothing. It feels like just a silly, nonsensical waste of time, just like Suicide Squad was. And I'm not getting any superhero vibe at all. So why are we going to get dragged down this road again?
Is the world more peaceful since the revolution? It is a shame that your people suffered.
8 episodes, once a week. The newest, biggest meme of the year 2019. This is The Mandalorian. This is what we're talking about. We have seen it all the way to the end. We teased you guys with 3 reviews, and then we kind of like backed off, and then kind of backed off from backing off, and then finally actually backed off. But now we're here to give the final word on the 8 episodes of The Mandalorian, written by Jon Favreau. Joe, what did you think of the end of The Mandalorian? Go.
They make it look so easy, don't they?
Thank you. Please continue. Go.
That's it. I mean, honestly, I don't even have a whole lot more to say about it, except that I'm looking at this, saying, why was that so difficult? Like this is quite literally exactly what I've always wanted from Star Wars. This is exactly what I've been saying for, I mean, you and I have been doing the show for many years now, right? We have been talking about Star Wars in one way or another for a long, long time. And I have said so often that it's repetitive, but I'll say it again, that Star Wars has always been this big enough world, a rich enough world that you could do anything in it. You could do whatever you wanted in it. And again, it was the balance of fan service. I mean, there's so many things in this world that it would be almost hard to not have references to other things without making it so weirdly conspicuous and fan servicey. And again, there's no reason to sort of break the lore that exists to push your story forward. And here we got 3 episodes in a row that were just schlock awful garbage. And we're just like, what? Why? I feel like it's harder to do it wrong than to just do it right. And here you go, Exhibit A. This is what I've always been talking about. The Mandalorian is essentially a Western in space. It's a spaghetti Western in space in the world of Star Wars. It jives perfectly that the tone they're going for, the story they're telling, to be set in the world of Star Wars. It just works flawlessly. And I swear to you, there's nothing about this series that I have a problem with, except for possibly the running times. I mean, there's a couple little moments that, armchair quarterbacking, we could say, well, that performance was a little this, or maybe I would have done it a tiny bit differently. But for the I mean, this is an A, and this is easily an A. This is easily one of the best things I've seen from Star Wars in decades, and I want more of it. And I really hope that the next season, I really do hope that they just sort of flesh it out more. Again, the running times bothered me. I felt like as soon as I was getting into it, the episode was over, and I had to wait for next week. I hope at least next time they at least give us hour-long episodes. I understand that it's a lot, but the way the episodic shows, as opposed to doing a movie, you can just take your time a little bit. Like, yes, I want an hour, but again, I don't mind a little more conversations, a little more, just chewing the scenery a little bit. I just want more. I want more of it. There you go. I don't know. I mean, can you tell I like it?
Really, I cannot.
Yeah.
I cannot. And I kind of feel like, wow, I'm like, if we're going to use some 80s vernacular, I'm like some up-and-coming comedian who has to follow up after Rodney Dangerfield. That was actually very well done. Very elegant. The only other thing I want to add is, one of our pet peeve terms is, what I've been calling the Rian Johnson excuse, the subvert expectation. Okay. See, we want you to understand something, Mr. Johnson, and Benioff and Weiss, the creators of the Game of Thrones television show. It's neat to subvert expectations as long as it's earned. For example, and this is huge spoilers if you haven't watched the show, you want to talk about the greatest moment of subverting expectations that you've ever seen? Big chase scene in episode 7. Quill has the child is being chased by speeder bike troopers, and he's getting close to the ship, and in my head, I'm saying to myself, this is where IG-11 comes out. He's going to kick some serious ass, and Quill dies. That's how you subvert expectations.
Yes. And he stayed dead, by the way.
Yes. Yes. And it broke my heart that he died, but I loved the show for doing it.
Yeah, I'm with you 1,000%. Right. There's actual stakes. There is actual risk. If a character dies, he actually dies. He doesn't get miracled back to life, or, oh no, he was on a different ship, or some other BS. Yeah, I feel like this is a Star Wars show for grown-ups. If you want to make nonsense for children, well, whatever. You do what you want to do. This is Star Wars for me. I like this so much, and again, I find it that it's what really just leaves me scratching my head is why this was so difficult. Why? I mean, a couple fans doing Star Wars do something that everyone loves. One of my favorite walkaways from this is that, again, the Star Wars episodes come out, they crank out the toys, they crank out the merchandise, and it goes and it sits on shelves and it collects dust. No one wants it. No one wanted a Rose Tico doll. They just sat there collecting dust. Yet The Mandalorian comes out, and in the first few episodes, I go to Starbucks and they're making a Baby Yoda drink. I was flipping through YouTube the other day, and I saw that somebody had made a Baby Yoda cocktail. and if you take a glass with a green filled beverage with 2 lime wedges on the ends to form ears, I mean, okay, I get it, I see it. It was great. So the fan reaction, the organic rising of the response to it has been organic. You just do a quality show and the people will come. So the corporate shoving down to people's throats of the nonsense that was the 3 episodes, which, and again, those are so disappointing and you can't undo them. It just is what it is. That is forever what the Star Wars series of 9 will be. Anyway, I shouldn't turn this into a bashing of the other Star Wars, but the moral of the story is that I'm just thrilled with this show, and it's exactly what I've always been sort of hoping for. And it's the one thing about Star Wars now that I can truly say that I'm a genuine fan of, and be proud to say that.
He's a criminal's worst nightmare. A cop who enjoys the danger.
No guns, no jiu-jitsu, just bring him down.
Do you really want to jump?
Well, then that's fine with me. Come on.
Wait, what do you mean? Wait a minute. What the...
He was ready to retire. Now, he's gonna wish he had.
Gun! Oh!
Raj, meet your new partner.
New partner? Too old for this.
2 newly paired cops who are complete opposites must put aside their differences in order to catch a gang of drug smugglers. Written by Shane Black, directed by Richard Donner, Lethal Weapon. Oh, it was a simpler time when you just had 1 writer credit and 1 director credit, wasn't it?
Seriously, right? What was the last thing that we did that you had to rattle off 27 different names?
Jumanji. Each of the Jumanji movies had a frickin' writer's list longer than my arm.
Yeah.
But yes, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. This is, to understand this movie, this is, all right, I'm stuttering now, but I'm trying to put it into context. The biggest problem with this movie is if you were born after, let's say, 1995. If you were born after 1995, you would probably look at this movie and say to yourself, what's the big deal? And I would have to be, oh, my child, please sit down. You have to understand that this is the father of all those types of movies. Now, the grandfather, you could say, and I think you would agree with me, would be the movie 48 Hours. The Walter Hill 48 Hours.
I knew right where you were going, but yes, good.
But that movie basically created the formula, quote unquote, of the buddy cop movie. This is the movie that perfected it. And this is the movie that all other movies since, it's like we talk a lot about how superhero movies, we always benchmark it to, ironically, Richard Donner's Superman. And for buddy cop movies, this is the movie that we benchmark it to. And again, Richard Donner. Richard Donner seems to be the key thing.
Yeah, very true. Listen, first of all, we are very much of the same mindset on everything you just said. I totally agree with you that this perfected the buddy cop movie. This is by far the best example, and that it's the best example when it gets when it gets parodied. Yeah. I feel like the whole I got 10 minutes to retire. Oh, something bad happened. It's kind of, first of all, it's been redone in a lot of movies, but they sort of, a lot of other outlets have parodied that whole formula. But yeah, I mean, this was it. This was the one that invented it, and this was Shane Black when Shane Black was Shane Black. This was when he really kind of came out and became a force to be reckoned with. And this film, everything about it just works perfectly. And one of the things I love it is that the tone of the film, this is one of those times when, whenever we're going to review a movie, We rewatch it, and even though I've probably seen this a gazillion times, we still make the point to sit down and rewatch it anyway. So I'm sort of at the point with this movie where it takes a lot for me to kind of go, oh, I didn't really notice that before, or I kind of forgot about that. There was a point later on, and when Murtaugh's daughter gets kidnapped, there was, and these are bad guys, right? I mean, there's no two ways about it. These are bad guys. They're not the cartoony bad guys. These are real bad guys. When they go to the house and they find the note, right, from the bad guys. And I don't know if you noticed it, but there's one shot where Riggs picks it up to read it, and you can see your daughter looks really good naked.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, I remember when I saw it this time, I can't remember if I noticed that before, but this time I noticed it, and I kind of went like, boy, that is a pretty grim little addition to that film. Like it's darker, you know what I mean, than I kind of remembered the movie actually being. But the fact that was pretty much as bad as it ever got, and it's almost like blink if you miss it, and nothing else ever gets that graphic. It just goes to show how this film really played. They perfectly tread that line. It's realistic. It can get ugly. It deals in real violence and real ugliness, but it never lost its sense of fun and never going too far into that darkness. So I really feel like in a lot of ways this is sort of a perfect film to emulate and to really kind of look at it and say, now that's where they get things right.
Well said, my man. Actually, it's funny you should say that, because this was the first time I've actually watched the movie in a Blu-ray edition, and I had never seen those words on the kidnap note before. So I'm taking that as a, hey, Blu-ray version of the movie, and that's why I can see it clearly. And yeah, that is extremely grim. I was like, holy moly, I hadn't realized that. And the other thing that the Blu-ray ruins is when they jump off the building, you actually see the handcuffs fall apart as they jump.
Dude, I saw that years ago. I always caught that. In fact, that's a really interesting thing, because I remember thinking, like, when I first saw that, and I'm talking like, I think when I first got it on back then, I probably still somewhere have the actual VHS tape of this movie that I bought. I'm 99% sure I have it here someplace. So yeah, believe me, I was a fan of this film from the beginning. Like it came out in the theater and I was hooked. I was already like a major fan. But yeah, I remember early on noticing that the cuffs break, and I thought, what was interesting to me was like, what an easy thing to go back and reshoot, because you're shooting, like, for the cuffs to actually break, you have to be looking at, I guess, the actual stuntmen. I mean, because it's a real stunt, which is another reason why I love this movie, and I love that, even just that scene. The idea that they break almost is sort of like a mixed thing for me, because on one hand, it's a full-blown blooper, like a film flub that you figured they would have fixed somehow, and probably easily could have fixed. But the fact that they left it in sort of made me kind of go, but that just shows you that this was an actual stunt. Like, the two stuntmen obviously would not really be cuffed because they'd break their wrist.
It'd be too dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably guarantee that they would break their wrist. So they were designed, I'm sure, to break away on the way down, and they probably meant to, grab each other's hands on the way, but just not at that moment. But I remember thinking, like, what an easy shot to fix. Like, why wouldn't you just get, the actual actors, get Mel and somebody else on just a 3-foot ledge and shoot them jumping off? But they didn't. They left that in there. And I thought that was really interesting, because it's a blink and you miss it moment, but if you catch it, it just sort of lends a little authenticity to the fact that it was a genuine stunt.
The 80s were such a simpler time. I'm sure they noticed it, but this is good. This goes back to part of a moment in time, because nowadays they would have digitally, made sure that the chain didn't break or some sort of nonsense like that. And honestly, I was surprised with the remaster that maybe they hadn't, but they hadn't, fixed that, but they didn't. So I was kind of surprised when I still saw that in the remaster that I saw. But back then, it's not like it is today. People consume media so differently today than they did back in the 80s. Back then, it was in the movie. You maybe rented it from Blockbuster every once in a while, because there was still a time when if you wanted to buy a videotape, you had to wait like a year and maybe get it at Suncoast Video or whatever the hell that place was on sale for like $20. Because when they initially came out, they were like $80 a tape.
Yeah.
So I don't think they thought really much about continuity errors in back then. But here's one thing that really surprises me the most, though. If you think about it, you have that very glaring continuity error. It's glaring. It's out there. But honestly, that's it. I watched very closely throughout the rest of the movie, trying to look for any other types of, glaring errors, and aside from every once in a while a stunt person's face, covering themselves when it's not really Mel Gibson and stuff like that. But that's to be expected. Aside from that, it is actually a really solidly put together movie. And the continuity between scenes and the logic and the character progressions as the movie went along are actually really solid. And this is an 80s action movie. You're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be yippee-ki-yay, mother father, and stuff like that. You're not supposed to have actual characters and motivations and stuff like that. And, one of the things I really enjoy about the movie is the fact that each character does have a little bit of character. In typical Shane Black fashion, they give like a 30-second backstory to each character, yet it works. It's like this is the general. He's in charge of Shadow Group. Okay, and he's dealing drugs. Boom, there it is. And yet it works. This is Mr. Joshua. He's a mercenary. He feels no pain. Okay, that works. This is Riggs. He's suicidal since his wife died in a car accident. All right. And this is Murtaugh. He's an older cop. And this is the first time he's ever actually been in real cop shit ever since he met up with Riggs. Okay, there it is. Very simple, very straightforward characterizations. And it's a tribute to probably Donner and the actors that they make each of these like 30-second snippets of a character work so damn well. Hell, even Gary Busey was freaking intimidating for completely other reasons than just because the guy's freaking Fruit Loops today.
Don't kill anybody. Don't kill anybody. I'm too old for this. Are you as good as you say you are? Nobody can touch me.
It is the perfect buddy cop movie, and even that is kind of dismissive because it's like it's just a great film on its own. And you're absolutely right. They just don't write stories like this. They do not give you the like when you're talking about the backstory of the villains. Yeah, I mean they had a pretty good sized backstory. I mean I cannot recall any other movie that like. How many movies are there where it's cops versus drug dealers, and they're just drug dealers because drug dealers are bad, just they're bad people. So they're drug dealers. That's all you need to know. Here you get a full blown backstory to like the origin of this organization that they like literally go all the way back to Vietnam, that they were selling heroin from back in those days, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like Air America was something I've heard of before. I mean, that was an actual group in Vietnam. Again, I don't know the whole history of it, but I mean, the fact that I even know that this movie has that, and it gives you a full blown story of what this is, how there's some sort of like, and again, both Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh are veterans. They're veterans of Vietnam, and I thought like that, and that just sort of added this interesting level of like personal connection. It's like the bad guys also are having a Vietnam origin, you know, and Murtaugh's buddy who got tied up in the whole thing, Hunsaker. You know, he's also he's a Vietnam buddy. So there's this weird sort of backstory and personal connection for all the players involved that it's almost like they brought a little part of the war home, frankly. And again, as ugly as war is, they brought the ugliness home, and Roger and Riggs are essentially still fighting that war in a way. They're now sort of defending their home, their modern life, their family and the children against the ugliness of that war. And what other movie brings that level of complexity to their stories? Any other movie is like, oh, he's a bad guy, he's a drug dealer, let's go get him and shoot him.
You're absolutely right, man. There is characterization and storytelling in here. It's like most movies go for the spectacle first and worry about the story and characterizations after. This movie went differently. They knew that they could make the spectacle work. They just wanted to make sure that the characters work. If you don't care about any of the characters by the time the end starts to come up, you know, who cares? What's the point? Right. Then it's just you know, dots on the screen is about the best thing. You know, one of the other things about, and I don't think this movie gets a lot of credit for this, one of the other things I love about this movie, you know, besides the characterizations, the writing, really good, the way the mystery unfolds, how they work everything out, the giant cell phone that he's carrying around, I love that. I'm sorry, it is such a product of its time, but that giant handheld cell phone just kills me every time it pops up on the screen.
You actually see that twice, by the way, and I keep wondering if it's the same one in both scenes.
Probably is. Back then, those things were freaking expensive.
Yeah. Do you know where the second time you see that is, by the way?
I thought it was back at the police precinct, or was it with the bad guys?
With the bad guys. There's a shot when Joshua takes out Hunsaker and
yes, on the truck. You're right. So it's probably the same one.
Just a little. Again, watch it a million times, you'll pick up these things. But again, I feel like I totally derailed you. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. One of my favorite parts of the movie is one of the oldest tropes is, you know, we have a plan. This is exactly how the plan is going to work. Okay, let's go into it, and the plan starts to fall apart, and they have to improvise and so on and so forth, but they win the day. In this movie, after the daughter, Rihanna, is taken, and they're meeting in the dry bed out in the desert, they don't tell you what the plan is. They just tell you that things are going to get bloody, okay? And they go out, and, you know, there goes Riggs running off in the distance, and I'm thinking to myself, well, since they didn't tell us the plan, the normal trope is the plan is going to go perfectly. But it doesn't.
Right.
They lose. And that still remains to me one of the most fascinating moments in cinema, because I don't remember another movie that has ever done anything like that since. They lose. At the end, they get captured. We had no idea what their plan was, so it's a surprise when Roger pulls out the grenade, and, you know, it's not a surprise when Murtaugh starts taking people out. But it's funny how even as I was watching it now, I kept thinking to myself, because I couldn't remember, I hadn't seen the movie in years. I'm like, where the hell is the general? It's like, oh, that's right. The general is the one that gets Murtaugh. Of course.
Riggs,
thank you, Riggs. Excuse me. Oh, my God. I'm getting old, Sonny.
But that was really, it's just such a great moment, honestly. And when the guy comes up behind Riggs, so good. And what was great, too, I love how, you know, it was sort of an interesting twist, because it's almost like you thought that Joshua would be the one to take out Riggs and the general would be the one to take out Murtaugh, because there's a little age difference and seniority, whatever. And again, you're waiting for, and of course you get the big showdown with Joshua and Riggs later, of course.
Completely unrealistic, but that's beside the point. Go on.
Oh, well, I got to hear you talk about that. But anyway, I you're absolutely correct. I love that whole idea. And by the way, you know, we were talking about the extensive backstory that the villains get. Honestly, I also like the idea that there's sort of a backstory for Riggs. Not so much a backstory, but just the idea that, like, I remember talking to people back in the day, and it was like, oh, this guy, he's like this super athlete. He could do this, he could do that. And I'm like, well, that's kind of every action here. I mean, they're sort of over the top, But what I loved about that was that they sort of fleshed out a little bit about his background, again, in Vietnam, how he was able to, I love that bit where he's walking out of Murtaugh's house and he says, I took this guy out 1,000 yards, rifle shot, high wind. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was sort of like a good way to sort of flesh out, like, this guy didn't just roll out of bed one day and be an action hero. I feel like, and that's a lot of just 80s tropes are, just he's a badass just because. But Riggs, they kind of, again, they give him some actual believable personality to sort of go with, with his, like, again, it's not a backstory per se, but just a little fleshing out the idea that there's a reason why he can do what he can do.
Yeah, he's not a superhero or anything like that. He's had training, and he was exceptionally good at it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, that is an excellent point, man, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. But I figure I should get back to my little point there about the unrealistic. It's funny how this movie takes itself and puts itself in a place that feels real throughout most of it. And even at the moments of being a bit over the top, it doesn't feel over the top. My biggest issue is the big fight between Joshua and Riggs at the end. If it had been if it had just been Murtaugh and Riggs alone when they catch up to Joshua and Riggs decides he's going to take him to school the old-fashioned way, that'd be one thing. But when the whole neighborhood gets surrounded by cops and stuff like that, it's like, no, he's got to do this himself. It's like, oh, that is such the cliche. That is my really only problem. And listen, and I loved the scene. I loved the fight. Don't get me wrong. But from a whole, we're subverting the normal tropes of the action hero and stuff, and actually giving character and giving reason and logic to how things all go in this particular direction. That one little part was just kind of like that, over the top for me, just a little bit.
I don't know if I'm going to agree with that.
You don't have to. It's just personal taste.
Yeah, I'm getting you. I mean, I read you, and yeah, I've always thought that was one of the best climax fights in any movie, really. And I kind of feel like it's sort of up there and even a little bit better than the big fight in Die Hard.
Ooh. Yeah.
Because I find,
I don't know, actually.
One of the great highlights in Die Hard is obviously the fight with him and what's his face, and it's great.
Yeah.
The long haired blonde guy, I forget his name too. But Carl, I think was his name in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that fight was absolutely incredible. But I find that the one in Lethal Weapon, it's so the word that comes to mind is visceral. Like it is so much more. Like, again, the one in Die Hard is tough. It is, but it has sort of like an over the top climax, which is brilliant in the context of the film. But here it's like they're rolling around in the mud, choking each other. I mean, the punches feel real. They're bloodied and bruised. I mean, I just find that whole thing to be so great, and I appreciate the cinematic aspects, like the guy just lucky enough hit the fire hydrant in the front. So now there's rain everywhere, and the lights are all over the place. So you kind of get almost like you're getting like full blown J.J. Abrams, lens flares in the middle. I mean they do everything to make this thing as epic as possible, but they still kept it very much on the ground. Again, I'm sort of like back in those days, you were expecting like backflips, big roundhouse kicks, a big kung fu-y kind of a climactic fight. That's not what this was. This was two guys scrapping. I mean, like they know how to fight. They know how to fight well, but it's not. They're not doing backflips. They're not doing that. Black Widow backflippy, twisty, headlocky. Like tying them and tying you. I just love it. It's just so cool.
Yes, I agree. The fight. I'm not disagreeing that the fight isn't cool. It is cool. It is visceral. The fight itself feels real. It's just my feeling was that the circumstances of that fight is what took this movie from action movie to over-the-top action movie.
You mean like specifically with like the cops standing back and watching and the town?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
I don't have a problem with it, but I get you. I hear you that it could. Yeah. Okay.
That's all. And again, I'm not even really complaining about it.
Yeah.
I don't mean to complain about it. It's just, it is that one moment, that one second, that one thing that just kind of, for a moment, just brought me out of it. But it wasn't very long. And once the fight actually got started, it was out of it. But I would be remiss if I didn't call out, because part of it is telling people not only how we see it, how it fits cinematically, but how it fit with us emotionally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I totally hear you. I mean, it's all we're talking about. And by the way, I feel like if we'd be very remiss if we didn't talk about the pairing of Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. I mean, these two guys, you talk about just a perfect match. And honestly, I don't know if I've ever, I know I've seen him before, and I know Danny Glover, I know for one thing, he was like bad guy number 3 in the movie Witness with Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
So but I don't remember him in anything really big until then. So this was really the first time I ever saw Danny Glover in anything, and I was just like, wow, I mean, he's really good. He's really good. And the way to offset Mel Gibson, who at the point, I mean, I think he was probably at that point, I mean, it was at the height of his popularity. And then, of course, this movie brought him up even more. He was really, and he was sort of the perfect guy for this, because he was the perfect person for this role, I think. And honestly, I remember him at that point, probably the thing that I knew him for most would have been like the Mad Max movies. A couple other, dramas, like he's been in a lot of good things up until this point, but the Mad Max, I think, was the only like his foray into like action movies, and his sort of unhinged way in that was really, really good. So I think based on that, I would have, agreed that he was the perfect person to play this character. And boy, what a perfect, I mean, it's the perfect roles for each of them individually, and together they're just spectacular.
Agreed. I will. My probably my favorite scene of interaction between them happens right after he takes the jumper off the side of the building.
Hey, okay, no bullshit. You want to kill yourself? Oh, for Christ! Shut up! Yes or no? You want to die? Yes or no? I got the job done. What the hell do you want? Didn't answer the question. Oh, what do you want to hear, man? Do you want to hear that sometimes I think about eating a bullet? Huh? Well, I do. I even got a special one for the occasion with a hollow point. Look, make sure it blows the back of my goddamn head out. Do the job right. Every single day I wake up and I think of a reason not to do it. Every single day. And you know why I don't do it? This is going to make you laugh. You know why I don't do it? The job. Doing the job. Now, that's the reason. You want to die? I'm not afraid of it. I ain't afraid of it. Here, take my gun. Don't nibble on the barrel. Pull the trigger. Go ahead, pal. Be my guest. Go ahead if you're serious. You shouldn't tempt me, man. Put it in your mouth. Bullet might go through your ear and not kill you.
Yeah, under the chin.
Yeah, under the chin. Ow! You're not trying to draw a psycho pension. You really are crazy.
I'm hungry. I'm gonna go and get something to eat.
Murtaugh pulls him into that room, and he's like, are you out of your mind? And it's like, it is some really intense acting between the two of them, and the whole build up to the gun under the chin, and when Murtaugh stops it with the to this day it still hurts when he stops it with his thumb. Every single time he does it, I instinctively grab my hand when he pulls the trigger and it hits his thumb. Yeah, every time.
Oh my god. I kind of feel the same way. I'm like, oh boy, like that wouldn't just be ouch and moving on. No. I'd be crying like a girl if my finger got stuck in that.
Seriously.
That's so true. And yeah, I mean, that's what an incredible scene. And again, by the way, see, and that's the thing too. I think that people sort of forget that, the actual drama in this movie is spectacular. And it's like, again, like if I were to try to explain this movie to somebody and just say like, well, it's an action movie, it's a buddy cop movie, again, so dismissive, because the full blown drama in this movie is great. And the performances by the actors are awesome. I mean, that scene of Murtaugh and Riggs squaring off, yelling at each other, and Gibson is just on a total diatribe. He's just on a tear, yelling back. Oh my God, just so good. That is great. It's just great cinema.
And some amazing dialogue. It's amazing acting. Some of the expressions between the two of them in that scene leading up to when he was pulling the trigger is some of the most intense acting I've probably seen from either of them.
Yeah.
And, the look of surprise on Glover's face is so damn genuine. And the way, you're seeing Gibson just, trying to, he wants to, lash out, but he's trying to hold it together. It's just... so easily could that have gone into almost parody level, and yet he managed it so well, summing it up with his little "I'm hungry," and the way he says it too is just the delivery is perfect. And some of my favorite dialogue, to this day, I admit it, I cribbed it from this movie. To this day, whenever somebody says, God must hate me, my response is always, hate him back, works for me.
Yeah, seriously. You can't get more badass than this movie. I mean, that is the truth. And by the way, you sort of reminded me, again, that scene where they're, do you really want to kill yourself? Any other movie, that scene just followed the jump, right? The jump off the building, right? Now, most movies you would think everything happening is sort of leading up to that big jump, right? The big jump is the big stunt. That's what we're all sort of getting ready for. Yay. And it happened. It's good. We move on. The jump, right? I mean, again, this is a scene that does not have anything to do with the plot. This has nothing to do with the drug dealers, right? It has nothing to do with that. We are now just doing something that is a getting to know our characters moment, right? The actual suicide, the jumper, and Riggs going up there to handle the situation, again, it's just to get to know our characters a bit. And the jump, right? Now, the jump is the big moment, right? The jump, the big holy smokes moment. But that is, when you look at the structure of the story, that scene is a buildup to the confrontation between Murtaugh and Riggs, right? The jump is the vehicle that takes you to the real climax of that scene, which is the two of them yelling at each other. The jump is what builds your emotion. That's the holy shit, and your adrenaline is up. So when the two of them are fighting with each other, your blood is at a fever pitch already. You're high as a kite because of what you just saw, and we're all emotions are high, tensions are high. So then when they start yelling at each other, your emotions are at a pitch. So you're totally on board with that moment, that argument that they have.
I remember the first time I saw that scene very vividly, actually, because I laughed. I was laughing my head off with him, joking around after he jumped off the side of the building. And I love how Donner and Gibson and Glover were all like, oh, you think that's funny? And then they showed the dark side of exactly what just happened. It was such a brilliant juxtaposition and a great character moment that I don't think there's ever been a movie that's done anything close to perfect as that particular dichotomous scene that they did. I don't think there's any movie that has ever done it any better. And that is not out-acted, not out-directed, not out-edited, save for the handcuffs breaking off at the top of that scene. It's like when people say, to me, if somebody says to me, why is this movie so great? If you could just show me one scene that you think makes this movie so great, I would probably go to that scene because it is the perfect way of describing who each of these characters are. The grizzled vet, the suicidal young kid, what their situation is, right there. That little 5-minute sequence tells us more about the type of characters we are dealing with than any of the new trilogy did with any of the characters.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I mean, right. I mean, this is quite frankly a lesson in perfection, because again, when we get to the scene, I mean, when the two are captured, the daughter's already been captured. Now the two of them have been brought in. They're being tortured. And first of all, I feel like Mel Gibson getting tortured is getting to be like a trope in itself, frankly, these days. But this was sort of the early, but honestly, that is sort of what they call the all is lost moment. You know, I mean, like we're down. I mean, things are as bad as they could possibly be. So once they snap out, right, once they break out, which leads right into, I mean, the score kicks in, by the way, and I have to sing praises to the score.
Michael Kamen, once again.
Absolutely brilliant. And so once there's the shootout in the nightclub, and then it spills out into the streets, and when like Riggs is literally running after the cars. I mean, he's on foot, for crying out loud. I mean, and that's the moment. And when they're having a shootout in the middle of the street, everything has been done so well up until that point that this moment is so satisfying, because again, it's over the top action, but I've gotten to know all of the characters. I know the players involved. I know, like, Murtaugh is out there. I mean, he's emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted. Riggs, I mean, he's emotionally battered, but physically it's almost like you got a kick of steroids. You know Joshua, you know him, and you know that he's very capable. So, like, I mean, everything has been done right up until this well. I've gotten to know these people so well, and I've gotten into their psyche, and I've been emotionally drained with them, that when this happens, boom. I mean, again, it's not a movie where it's just low attention span theater and it's one action scene right after the other because whatever. No, this one had the right build up. The setup is perfect. The emotional build up is great. So the explosion of action, boom, is so satisfying. And again, I'm going to sound my age, but they just don't make them like they used to.
Suppose we better register you as a lethal weapon.
And what score would you give this then?
Probably not a secret, but this gets a 10. This is easily one of my 10 movies. It has been a lifelong favorite of mine. I mean, even like people who know me, like friends that I had back in the day. I mean, my buddies and I we'd recite lines from this movie constantly. I seem to recall busting a friend's windshield trying to redo a stunt from one of these and having to pay for it. Sorry about that.
Is there video of this?
I wish. This was kind of before the days of video. We were clowning around one day and ended up on the hood of somebody's car and literally smashed the windshield. No, I mean, believe me, this was a hardcore favorite of mine for many, many years. And I still say to this day, it holds up as one of the greatest movies ever made, frankly. And again, I'm not trying to say I'm comparing it to Citizen Kane or Gone with the Wind, but I mean, again, this is the quintessential buddy cop film, and every note lands correctly. It really does. It's so flawless in its execution, and it's so enjoyable to watch at the same time. The tone is perfect. The level of action is perfect. They don't get over the top. When we get into the sequels, that's a different story, and I'll have some things to say about that. But this one, again, it stays grounded. So I never once take my head out of the film to say, oh, that's a little over the top, or that was a little silly. Nope. Everything is just spot on perfect.
What impresses me most about this movie, as I was rewatching it, is that not only do the stunts that they did in the movie hold up to this day and were jaw-dropping. Here I am, it's 2020, and I'm watching these stunts, and I'm like, holy crap! For like a 30-year-old movie, and I'm seeing this, and I'm like, it still amazes me to watch. But the other thing about this movie that amazes me is just how progressive the characters get. All the characters have an arc of some sort. Things aren't so cut and dry. Things don't happen just because the plot requires it to happen. It happened, well, except, for the Joshua fight at the end. But happened because they demonstrate who these people are. Then they take away their hope, and then they work on getting it back. They get to where they're going honestly. You know, maybe it's over the top. Who cares? It's honest. It's done in an honest way. It never betrays its own vision in order to get there. It never shortcuts. It gives us what it needs to get the story from point A to point Z in an honest fashion, and was action-packed and fun to boot. So I also gave it a 10. I see no reason why this movie isn't like I've always described it as the if Die Hard is the quintessential 80s action movie, this is your quintessential 80s buddy cop movie. And frankly, there has been none greater since.
My friend, I think there is a reason why you and I share such a kinship with how we view films, because I completely agree. Die Hard is the perfect action film. Lethal Weapon is the perfect buddy cop film. I'm with you 1,000%.
And I got to tell you, man, and I really, really thought about this, but for my Who Asked You, I got nothing. I nitpicked. I absolutely positively nitpicked, but I'll be the first to admit that's nitpicking. That's the point of Who Asked You is, what would you do different? And the honest answer is nothing.
Yes. Well, I'm with you there. I mean, our rule is, if we're giving it a 10, then obviously we find the movie to be pretty flawless.
You broke the rule once. You broke the rule once.
So it's possible. It's possible. Yeah. In fact, if you want to, just for the sake of variety, one of the funny things I find about this film is that there's there's a couple cutscenes, actually. There's a couple deleted scenes. One of them in particular, one of them is weird. It's just kind of a fight in a bar where we understand that Riggs is a badass and he drinks too much. And there's another one that kind of, I guess, is meant to establish his, first of all, his general recklessness, but also his marksmanship, frankly. And there was a scene where the sniper in a school. And, I'm kind of glad they cut it, because I kind of felt like, well, first, we've already... It was almost like, the scene in the beginning where they show him doing the drug deal with the Christmas trees.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw this one, I was like, it was almost like just doing that again.
Yeah.
Another scene to show that Riggs is kind of nutty. And it was not necessary. And frankly, there was like a dead kid laying in the street, and I was like, yeah, maybe that's a little much. We don't need that. But what sort of struck me about watching that is that if you go, just go on YouTube and look for a deleted Lethal Weapon scene, and it's a school shooting with a sniper. It feels like a scene from Lethal Weapon 2 for some reason. It really it's a subtle difference, but it really felt like it was a scene right out of Lethal Weapon 2, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I felt like his performance in the second one, and I don't mean to skip ahead, but his performance in the second one there was a little subtle difference. But then when I saw this scene, I was like, man, that's the same thing. That is it really does look like Lethal Weapon 2. Go check it out, and you'll see, and tell me if you agree.
All right, I will. I do remember that there was another deleted scene where he paid a hooker to watch Three Stooges.
I think you're right, actually. In fact, I remember when the second one came around, there was a lot of comments about the Three Stooges, and I remember thinking, why does everybody say that? Because he didn't watch it in the first one. But that was another thing I picked up this time around. When the scene right before he's stuck up in his trailer with the gun, and he's debating to put it in his mouth or whatever, and he's watching Bugs Bunny, right? He was watching Bugs Bunny in a Christmas special.
The Christmas Carol, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But when you watch that scene, as the camera, they do an establishing shot of the trailer outside, the kids go by on a bike, and when they zoom in, you actually see the TV, and it's got the Three Stooges on it. Yeah. And again, I don't know if I ever full-blown noticed that before, but this time I did.
Yep, no, that was definitely, yes. The Three Stooges were definitely established from the first one subtly, and probably would have been more so if they kept the hooker scene.
Yeah.
But that aside, sir, for your consideration, there's a lot of positive about this movie. I'm curious what you focused on.
Yeah, this is probably going to be just another case of using this segment to sort of highlight an unsung hero. Because I think, like you said, everything about this film is spectacular. The leads, Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, are flawless in these roles. The direction is flawless, so congratulations to Richard Donner. And, of course, Shane Black with his screenplay. This is when Shane Black could do no wrong. So yeah, and all the supporting cast, I feel like all the supporting cast is not one weak spot in the whole thing. Again, but I'll just reflect on an unsung hero, and I think that is the score. I think the score
Michael Kamen and Eric Clapton. Nice.
Michael Kamen, Eric Clapton, and some David Sanborn, who's kind of. I mean, and I love the combination here. I mean, Eric Clapton, you know, you think of him as rock and roll on guitar. Michael Kamen was up and coming at this point, or establishing himself here with those kind of scores, and David Sanborn was a jazz guy. So that combination, I think, really came together perfectly. And I almost feel like this is one of those times when the score is like a character unto itself. You know, the music in this film is so good, and it really lends itself to the tone of the film. And this was one of those soundtracks, by the way, that I listened to ad nauseum. When this film was out, again, huge fan, and I would listen to this soundtrack pretty regularly. And I remember some friends of mine kind of complaining that there was some tracks, specifically some action tracks, that didn't make it onto the score. I'm pretty sure that's been sort of rectified since, and I think there's probably an expanded score, possibly. I think, but I think some of those tracks might have come on with like later soundtracks. But yeah, anyway, the score for this is so good, and it's one of those where, you know, I go back to like the earlier James Bond films when sometimes like all he would be doing is walking through the lobby of a hotel room, but they would be playing the James Bond theme in the background. So it just made the whole scene cool. There's shots of this where Riggs is just walking around doing something. I mean, there's nothing actually happening yet. We're just sort of walking around or whatever, but that music is playing in the background. Boy, does it just adds such a level of cool to this movie that you know, it again ends up making it the perfect combination.
Dude, he was on my list for your consideration too. All three of them. I find this soundtrack to be one of the most iconic of its time. Still is. I mean, you can't. I don't feel that from an action movie perspective, you don't find beats like this anymore. In that convey so much with just a little bit of saxophone or a little bit of guitar or just a little bit of drums or anything like that. These are masters at their craft working here. So I absolutely will agree with you on that. But for me, I'm giving it to Dar Robinson and his stunt crew.
Oh, nice.
Has some of the most amazing stunts that to this day still make my jaw drop watching. Did you know that one of the most used pieces of equipment in stunt work is where a person's attached to a rope and they're kind of falling, they're free falling, but like literally within the last like 15 feet or so, a system kind of starts ratcheting the speed down, slowing it down. There's a scene that happens in this movie that shows the system off, where they just got done with being tortured. They just killed all the people. They're looking for Joshua, and there's a guy standing up above taking a shot, and Riggs shoots him, and he falls down, and he kind of just comes to a stop, hanging upside down.
Yeah,
that's a rigging system that was invented for this movie by Dar Robinson, who was the stunt coordinator for this movie.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's good catch, by the way, because I remember that when I was much younger and kind of started to get into movies, that was a name. Like, it was probably the only name of a stuntman I actually knew was Dar Robinson.
The man was a legend. He came up with such amazing stuff. In fact, do you remember the movie Sharky's Machine?
Yeah.
The jump off the what was, and I don't know if the record's been broken since, but what was at the time the highest jump off of a building into one of those giant blow-up mats was done by Dar Robinson for that movie.
Yeah, super cool. Good call, man.
Yep, and absolutely. And the sad part is just like literally a handful of years after this, he died like senselessly doing a stunt, just a motorcycle stunt for some stupid rat race movie or what, a remake of It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World.
Okay, I'm pretty sure. Is it this movie or another one? I think one of the movies, I remember being dedicated to Dar Robinson.
I think Lethal Weapon 2 was dedicated to him because I think he died in between.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah.
But yeah, no, he was the stunt coordinator for this movie. And dude, just even the shots with the helicopter. Do you realize that the helicopter, you see the helicopter kind of bouncing off the top of the limo? I'm sitting there with my hands in my mouth because it's like, that is just dangerous as frack.
Yeah, right.
Holy
Seriously.
smokes. Just even that was some of the shots with the helicopter, the way the helicopter, how low it was to the ground. The helicopter stunt work alone made the movie worth it. But the initial jump off of the building, that was done by a stunt man. That wasn't CGI or anything like that. And in fact, he trained the actress who played Amanda, who, by the way, went on to become Kelly, Woody's wife in Cheers.
No way. I did not
same
know
actress.
that. Oh,
Yep.
That's funny. And now that you say it, of course. Yeah, I mean, they look exactly the same. Oh, that's a riot.
Kelly.
Kelly.
Yeah, he actually trained her to do like the last part of it. Like there's, where she landed on the roof.
Yeah.
Where you see her kind of landing on the roof. He trained her to do that so that it would add an extra level of realism to it when she fell.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's great.
So yeah, stunt team gets it for me because that's some impressive as hell stunts across the board.
You ever met anybody you didn't kill?
Well, I haven't killed you yet.
Well, there ends Lethal Weapon for us, my man. Not too surprising the results. We've been kind of excited about talking about this, but I think we delved into it nicely, I think.
Yes, and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, we're late with this one, but yes, Merry Christmas. But ladies and gentlemen, now comes the fun. Nah, no movie next week. Actually, next week, ladies and gentlemen, the top 10 movies and 5 stinkers or something along those lines. I have no idea. We don't really put a number on the stinkers, but it's always the top 10 movies of 2019 from this guy right here, Joe, and then the following week is mine.
Yep. Yes, and I will say this: the fact that we are a teeny bit late, it's definitely given me a little chance to get caught up. So I am pretty happy with that. So yeah, so next week is it.
Yeah, I'm being perfectly honest when I say that I am up and down. My list is still evolving, and there's 2 movies I want to try to catch before I actually finalize the list. Parasite and 1917. Those are the 2 big ones that I want to catch because everybody's raving about them, so I want to see what it's all about.
Yep. Very cool. I'm looking forward to it, brother.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Is that it? Yep, that's it, man. So good to see you again as always. Good luck with the job, and thank you, sir, for an excellent show. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Same to you, my friend, and I'll see you here next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page on patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
I'm Roger Murtaugh. Y'all know me best from my Lethal Weapon movies. But when I finally decided to retire from the police force after 25 years of dealing with every junkie, psycho, lowlife scum out there, I decided that I wanted to do something that was a little less hectic. That's why I've opened...
We've opened.
Yeah, my partner and I have opened Riggs and Murtaugh, where we have dedicated our life to providing you with the finest service available. Are you folks enjoying your meal?
Actually, my husband ordered his steak well done, and
Yeah, this is medium rare.
yeah.
No, he asked for medium rat raws. That's why I brought it out in the kitchen.
Take it easy, Riggs.
Okay, no, I guess it's my mistake. I made the mistake.
No, it's okay. I just want it cooked a little more.
Oh, okay. He just likes it cooked a little more. You hear that, everybody? He just likes it cooked a little more.
Wait a minute. No, take it easy, Riggs.
What's this problem? You want to see me sell the throat?
Oh, my God!
I'll twist your head off and ram that steak down your throat and suck it back down through your eye socket.
Oh my God, crazy!
No, hold him crazy.
Crazy. Crazy? You want
want to see crazy? I'll show you. She called me crazy, Ross. She thinks I'm crazy.
You're not crazy.
I'll show you crazy. You see this? That's crazy. I'll blow your freaking head off.
No, Riggs, you're not gonna blow his head off.
Hey, I'll blow your head. You want to see me blow your wife's head off?
Please don't.
Oh, don't worry, he's not gonna blow your head off.
Okay, let me do it.
Oh,
Let me do it right here.
No, Riggs, no, you're not gonna blow anybody's head off. Put the gun down.
I'll blow my head off. I'll do it right here and now.
Yeah. Why don't you put it in your mouth so the gun goes right through your brain?
Don't tempt me. Don't you tempt me.
No.
Don't.
You really are crazy.
You know what, guys? I'm really not that hungry anymore.
Shut up!
Eat your potato.
No, Riggs, it's gonna be okay. We can put the steak back, Riggs. Riggs, give me the gun.
I screwed
Give
up,
me the
Ross.
gun,
I
Riggs.
blew it
Just
this
give me the
time.
gun,
I made
Riggs.
us look bad. Just
We all right, Riggs. Don't worry. No, let anybody stay there.
Don't let anybody
No, nobody gonna touch you, Riggs. Ain't nobody gonna touch you.
All right, ready.
Take it easy, Riggs.
That's better.
Are you okay, partner?
I screwed up, Ross. I really screwed up this time.
No, Riggs, you didn't screw up, Riggs.
The guy asked for his steak well done, Ross. I gave it to him medium rare. That means we're gonna have to throw the steak away and start all over again. You know how expensive porterhouse steak is, Ross. We're gonna lose money on it.
No. We don't have to throw the steak out.
We don't?
No. It's just a little overcooked. We can throw it back in the oven and cook it a little more. It'll be fine.
Really? Really?
Really?
Okay. Good. Okay, my gun. Who's got my gun? Who's my gun? Okay.
Both the guns.
Okay.
So if it's fine dining you like, come on down to Riggs in Murtaugh. Home of the full-bone prime rib, stone crabs and my very own green goddess dressing.
What's that? How about I blow your freaking head off? How's that sound?
I'm getting too old for this stuff.
Riggs and Murtaugh's, Wilshire at La Brea. Inquire about our early bird specials, 3 o'clock till 6 o'clock. Lunch delivery and takeout till 5 o'clock.